Good evening. I'd like to call to order this regularly scheduled meeting of the City Council for the City of Calistoga. It is Tuesday, March 16th at exactly 6 p.m. It is Tuesday, March 6th, and everyone in this room is paying attention. Rose, you thought you lost 10 days? And it is now 6:01 p.m. City Clerk Flampson, has this meeting for March 6th been properly noticed?
Yes, it has.
Thank you. Can we have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Lopez Ortega.
Here.
Councilmember Barnes.
Here.
Councilmember Kraus.
Here.
Vice Mayor Dunsford.
Here.
Mayor Canning.
Here, thank you. If you all please stand and join me for a salute to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We will now open oral communication on consent items or non-agendized items. This time is set aside to receive comments from the public regarding matters on the consent calendar or matters of municipal concern that are not on the agenda. Pursuant to Government Code Section 54954.3, also known as the Brown Act. However, the Council cannot consider any issues or take action on any request during this comment period. Speakers are encouraged to limit their comments to 3 minutes maximum so that all speakers have an opportunity to address the City Council. And as a reminder, you are not allowed to allot your speaking time to another speaker. I have one speaker card under public comment, and that's from Regina Pena. Nope, I took care of the other one. Please share with us your name and either your address or the organization you represent, should you so choose.
I will tell you both. I'm Regina Pena. I'm a new resident of Calistoga. I live on 1435 2nd Street.
Welcome.
Thank you. I'm very excited to be here. I'm here today. I'm the program coordinator for Up Valley Partnership for Youth. We're a community coalition supported by Up Valley Family Centers and the Napa County Office of Education. These are members of our coalition. Some of the members of our coalition. Our mission is to use the collaborative strength of parents, youth, and community members to address and prevent problems relating to youth substance use in the Up Valley. We want to share with you our thoughts and concerns as well as provide some information to you. This is specifically around marijuana dispensaries. Put my glasses on. That will help.
That's why I got the date wrong, by the way, is I didn't bring my
I should have
glasses.
shared
I'm going to
mine
fess
with
up
you.
right now.
I'm sorry. Next time I'll leave some for you. Dear Mayor Canning and members of the Calistoga City Council, we're writing to you as members of the Up Valley Partnership for Youth, an Up Valley coalition focused on preventing and reducing youth substance use. While we acknowledge the rights of adults to use marijuana as a result of Proposition 64, we want to prevent and reduce youth use of marijuana. We believe the City Council shares in this goal, and we need community leaders, decision makers, and citizens to keep the following facts in mind while making decisions about marijuana dispensaries in our community. According to the 2016-2017 California Healthy Kids Survey, marijuana is already easy to access among high school students in Calistoga, with 14% of 11th graders reporting they used marijuana in the 30 days prior to taking the survey, and 61% stating it was very easy or fairly easy to obtain marijuana. Too few high school students have talked to their parents about the dangers of marijuana use, with 57% of 9th graders and 51% of 11th graders reporting they have not talked to their parents about the dangers of marijuana use. The Healthy Kids Survey also shows that high school students frequently underestimate the harm of smoking marijuana, with 42% of 11th graders indicating slight or none when asked about the perceived harm of smoking marijuana once or twice a week. In states where cannabis is legal, there's an increased risk in unintentional overdose injuries among children. Additionally, poisonings from accidental ingestion of marijuana increased 153% among children under the age of 5 following legalization in Colorado. Heavy marijuana use also impairs young people's ability to concentrate and retain information, and the short-term effects of marijuana can include problems with memory and learning. California cities have extensive authority to design and manage the cannabis industry. Exercising this authority is important from the public health perspective, given the limited attention to public health issues in the new state regulatory structures now being developed. We have 5 considerations or recommendations we'd like you to consider. Number 1, maintain a 1,000-foot distance between dispensaries and schools with the understanding that if a new school opens within the existing 1,000-foot boundary, the city will work to relocate the dispensary. Currently, 13 municipalities, including Sonoma, have this best practice in place. 2, ensure outdoor grow policies stipulate that there are barriers to prevent theft. 3, require all dispensary employees to be over the age of 21. 3 municipalities currently have this best practice in place. 4, restrict the placement of any signage visible from the outside of the dispensary advertising the availability of medical marijuana. 2 municipalities, including Sonoma, have this in place already. And 5, require dispensaries to provide a 1-page, 2-sided insert to all clients on the dangers of cannabis use for youth. We hope you will consider these recommendations when making decisions about the accessibility of marijuana in our community. Respectfully, me.
Thank you.
I have information packets for you. If you have questions in the future, I hope you'll call us, and we'll provide whatever support we can in your decision-making process.
Thank you. Is anyone else in your group going to chat? I know some of these faces right here. That's you guys. We will be taking up, it's tentatively scheduled for the community forum in April, which is April 18th. The topic to be Prop 64, specifically dispensaries in the city of Calistoga. Similar process to what we did for community forums before coming to public hearing when we decided on outdoor cultivation. So put that on your calendar. If you've not been to a community forum, it's a lot more relaxed and allows people to have their input on that. But thank you for sharing the best practices from other communities. I appreciate that. Thank you, and welcome to Calistoga. I do not have any other speaker cards under oral communication. Is there anyone else interested in addressing the council? Yes, sir, in the back of the room. Should you so choose, Dennis McNay, please share with us your name and your address.
Oh, okay. Dennis McNay, Foothill Boulevard. Basically, what I have tonight is just kind of a question. It seemed to me in the recent past, you adopted an ordinance to notify adjacent properties when construction would start. Was that true, or did I just dream that?
My understanding is it depends on which type of construction, correct?
Oh, okay. I just wondered why that was and what's the type of construction?
So I'm going to default to the city manager on this.
Correct. New single-family residential, we notify the property owners within 300 feet.
Prior to construction.
Construction started next day on a single-family unit next door to me. No one ever notified me. Why do you make ordinances if you're not going to enforce them?
What is your address, Mr. McNay? Missed it the first time.
2653 still.
Okay. And I know you're on the cusp. Was this house being built in the county or in the city limits?
In the city limits.
All right.
I guarantee it.
Got it. We will absolutely look into that and get right back
Okay,
to
I'll
you.
probably get a notice tomorrow. But thank you for your time.
Thank you, Dennis. I appreciate that. City manager, can we follow up on that? Thank you very much. Anyone else wishing to address the council under oral communication? Not seeing anyone move toward the podium, I will close oral communication. And I will, is Kevin Eisenberg here? Yes, I'm going to continue to use the word podium, Kevin. It's actually a lectern, is that correct?
You know, I would like to address your
No, I just closed oral communication. I received some schooling 2 weeks ago on the difference between a podium and a lectern, but now I'm just, to be spiteful, I'm just going to continue to use the word podium.
not to mention it.
There we are. I will entertain a motion to adopt this evening's agenda as presented unless a modification is requested.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion by Councilmember Kraus. I have a second by Councilmember Barnes. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Council requests and ideas for discussion. Councilmember Lopez Ortega.
Yes, I had two things. First, I want to thank everybody in the community who came last Saturday to the event for the Soroctomy's craft feast. Thanks to your support, the club was able to raise good amount of money that will go to support different programs in our community, including the Read Aloud program at the elementary school. We will get more specific from members of our board that are present here. But also, there is still much to do regarding volunteer work and taking care of each other in this community. The Calistoga Cares Food Bank needs volunteers to pack, fill bags, and packages of food to be distributed in the community. If you are interested in doing this type of work, can you please call Helen Archer? And I have her phone number if anybody is interested, so she can give you specific details about this. And as I say before, we are in a small community and we have to take care of each other. So if you do a volunteer work, we have many organizations that they will need your help. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Barnes.
Just one thing tonight, I've received several phone calls from citizens, concerned citizens, about gravel in the bike paths in front of the new Silver Rose construction. Not being a bicyclist myself, I had no idea that such a problem could exist, but I went out and looked at it, and there indeed is a lot of gravel in those bike lanes on the right side of the road, of course, heading north, in front of the construction zone. I think we should require the construction company to keep those clean for public safety. Somebody could tip over or run out into the roadway to avoid a big chunk or something, get hit by a car. I think we should make it their responsibility to keep those bike lanes clean because they're the one putting the gravel on them. I see Mr. Eisenberg is here, and he is an avid bicyclist.
I didn't even complain, but I wholeheartedly
Well, I've had several complaints. You were not one, but I'll mark you down anyhow.
I believe it to be a condition of their building permit, so a simple reminder
I would have hoped so.
would be helpful. All right. Council Member Kraus.
I don't have anything this evening.
Vice Mayor Dunsford.
Nothing.
All right. I have a couple items. First, two apologies. I'm sorry, and I see her here. I was unable to participate in the reading program on Friday. My apologies. And I apologize to the Sir Optimus for missing your very successful crab feed. I was on a ski trip. However, I coupled it with business. And I met with, don't worry, that doesn't mean the city paid for it. But I did meet with the mayor of the city of Breckenridge, Colorado, and I met with the town planner for the city, town of Breckenridge, excuse me. Very similar demographics to ours, small community, about the same population. Very tourist-centric community, housing issues, labor issues, and they have, if some of you saw the CNN documentary a couple of years ago, they experienced firsthand the issue of dispensaries for recreational adult use of cannabis in their community. So it was time well spent, a lot of key learnings. As I've said before, I'm a big fan of plagiarism. If somebody's tried something somewhere else and it's worked or it hasn't worked, it's a good thing to steal from them. So greetings from the city or the town of Breckenridge, Colorado, back to Calistoga. Also, earlier this morning, I attended, and this is a matter, while it is outside of the city limits, it's certainly a Calistoga issue. I attended the Board of Supervisors meeting, specifically to the Blakely construction matter, and I am very happy to report that the board, for a second time, has approved the initiative allowing Blakely Construction to continue doing what they do and being where they are without sending it to the ballot for Napa County. So. It was the right thing to do, and it was done well. So not to say that it's completely over, because there are lawyers. Not that there's anything wrong with lawyers, any lawyers in the room. I think I'm looking at one with a tie on. No? Okay. Anyone with a tie up here makes us pretty nervous. So.
Why would he wear a tie?
He's not a lawyer.
Maybe he's a philanthropist and going to give us some money.
There we are. All right. So with that said, We will move on to the city manager's report. City Manager Feek.
Yes, the only thing I have tonight is somewhat of a personal nature. If you remember several months ago, I reported that my wife and I are expecting child number 3. And Kira is more round than a beach ball at the moment. So I expect within the next few weeks that I'll be taking a little bit of time off to welcome our first baby girl to the family.
Oh.
So just wanted to let everyone know.
Thank you. All right, proclamations, presentations, and awards. The first one, we have a service award for Administrative Service Technician Marina Smith for 5 years of service. It seems like you just started. If you'd like to come up to the podium or the lectern or the whatever you want to call it, Kevin. Certificate of a Sincere Appreciation awarded to Marina Smith, Administrative Services Technician, for your 5 years of dedicated service to the City of Calistoga, awarded this 6th day of March 2018, signed Chris Canning, Mayor of the City of Calistoga. Thank you very much. You got to come shake all of our hands. Thank you. Thank you for everything you do. Thank you.
Congratulations.
Okay, I'll go over there. Marina, you're not done. I just got yelled at. Next, we have there is listed on your agenda a service award to Rob Ebling for 10 years of service as a firefighter. He was not able to be here tonight, so we're going to hold that till he's able to be present. Next, we have two human trafficking proclamations, and one is going to be to Calistoga Seroptimist, and the other is to the Calistoga Rotary Club. And I'm going to, Kathy, these are identical, correct? All right. City of Calistoga Proclamation. Human Trafficking Awareness. Whereas human trafficking is a form of modern-day slavery in which victims are forced to work in various forms of labor exploitation, including but not limited to commercial sex acts and other services that are induced through force, fraud, or coercion. And whereas due to its isolating nature, many individuals across the globe are unaware that trafficking exists in their neighborhood, and whereas it is estimated that more than 20 million men, women, and children around the world are victims of human trafficking, and whereas the Seroptimist International Club of Calistoga and the Rotary Club of Calistoga have declared raising awareness of human trafficking as a platform for their clubs. Now, therefore, let it be resolved that I, Chris Canning, Mayor of the City of Calistoga, do hereby call upon the citizens of Calistoga to recognize the vital role we can play in ending all forms of slavery and to support the Seroptimist International Club of Calistoga and the Rotary Club of Calistoga as they raise awareness through education and other efforts to stop human trafficking. Signed, Chris Canning, Mayor of the City of Calistoga, and I believe we have a representative from each organization who will be coming up over here. Introduce yourself and say who you're representing.
Yes, of course. My name is Scott Cooper. I'm the Rotary Club president for this year, and it's an honor and a privilege to collaborate with the Seroptimists on this vitally important topic. So thank you very much.
And representing Seroptimists, please.
Nushi Safinia, the president of the Seroptimist Club this year.
Thank you very much. Here you are. Stephanie, I think you had something as well.
Stephanie Duff Erickson, 1725 Maggie Avenue, Calistoga. We missed you Saturday night, Mr. Mayor, but we did make a record amount of money.
I highly recommend you keep using that person.
Yeah, and I think one of the most impressive figures from Saturday night is $17,500 made for our Fund a Need for our Readers Aloud program, which is going to buy a lot of books. I want to thank the council for undertaking with Seroptimist and Rotary some work on stopping human trafficking. I'm the chair of the Seroptimist International of Calistoga Stopping Violence Against Women Club, and this is an issue that we've been working on for many years. So we feel like we're really making progress, and Seroptimist is absolutely delighted that we are able to team up with Rotary to move forward on this. I'll just mention one more thing, and that is one of our plans is to, and this is Carrie Domagala's baby. We are going to frame this proclamation and try and distribute it around town in the various hotels and motels and other businesses that would be willing to place it in a visible place. So thank you, City Council. This is going to be good work.
Thank you. Next.
Good evening. My name is Pam Parker, and I'm the governor of Seroptimist International of Founder Region. I live in St. Helena, so it wasn't a long commute for me to be here. But I would really
We let you across the border?
Yes, they did.
All right.
I climbed the wall. I would like to thank you as city council members, the mayor, and the community members for doing this proclamation. It's a great start for what we want to see across all of our Seroptimist clubs around the world, and we are a worldwide organization. So I would like to thank you. We're taking this idea and we're going to present it to the other clubs in our District 3, which is Lake County, Napa County, and Sonoma County. And we'll present this at our conference in May and hopefully get all of our other clubs to get on board as well. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And if you are a Seroptimist or a Rotary member in the audience, please stand so we can acknowledge what you guys have done. Thank you very much. I sit in the audience.
The
Thank
mayor
you.
refused to stand. He is a
I'm trying to be
Rotarian.
bipartisan here. All right, we'll move on to the consent calendar, and I'll entertain a motion to adopt the consent calendar as presented unless a pull or modification is requested.
I will move the consent calendar.
I second that.
We have a motion to move the consent calendar by Vice Mayor Dunsford and a second by Councilmember Lopez Ortega. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. There are no public hearings, but we will now move on to general government. Item number 10, consideration of a resolution ordering a construction contract to Granite Construction Company in the amount of $1,874,955 for the Phage Canyon Water Storage Tank Replacement Project, approving a budget adjustment and authorizing the city manager to execute the contract. The recommended action this evening is to adopt the resolution as presented, and taking us through this will be Derek. Derek, welcome back. Please introduce yourself.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of the council. I'm Derek Rayner, Deputy Director for Public Works, here for the City of Calistoga. The staff report you have before you tonight is the consideration to award a construction contract to Granite Construction Company to replace the 1 million gallon Phage water distribution storage tank. The authorization is for a total of $2.12 million for the total project costs. That will include not only the construction as well as the construction management and inspection services, as well as contingencies for the project. City staff successfully applied for a FEMA hazard mitigation grant as a result of after the Napa earthquake. And the funding will pay for 75% of the total project costs. Granite was the lowest bid, and MDS was the second lowest bidder. MDS protested Granite's bid for an unsigned non-inclusion affidavit. We also received a protest by UIG, a tank supplier, that said we had sole sourced the project. City staff, along with legal counsel and Kennedy Jenks, our design consultant, have reviewed each protest and are recommending the council waive the unsigned affidavit as a minor bid irregularity and award the project to Granite Construction. However, council may have the opportunity tonight to hear from both sides and decide not to award to Granite and award to MDS. The city did not sole source the tank supplier and had 2 vendors in our specification documents, along with or equal language in the contract documents. UIG is also not a general contractor bidder, so they can't technically protest the project. We have tonight with us David Rosenthal to my left, our city's legal counsel, as well as Don Barraza from Kennedy Jenks Consultants in the audience here tonight, and Mike and myself to answer any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Rosenthal, welcome back.
Thank you.
Council, any questions of staff on this item before I turn to our attorney to give us some guidance here?
I do have a question just on the methodology of sealed bids. I'm not totally familiar with it. It's my understanding that you send out a bid to, say, 5 companies. They return a sealed envelope with all the documents and their bid number in it. There's a certain amount of people sitting in a room. They open them up. They say Company A, $1.6 million, Company B, $2.3 million, and so forth. Rank them then according to the numbers. At that time, there is no way to vet the accuracy of the documents included, like the failure to sign of this non-collusion agreement. So it is not our fault that that was not included correctly, because we didn't have a chance to review those documents during the sealed bid process. Is that correct? I'm just trying to figure out where this went awry.
It's not the city's fault, because when
Can you turn on that microphone, please, because we do have people at home that have to hear this.
Thank you. David Rosenthal from the City Attorney's Office. The city sends out a package with, it's a large package with, 20 things that have to come back.
Right.
And all the bidders have to struggle to put everything together and send it back. And Granite made a mistake. They stuck the wrong piece of paper into the envelope.
Okay, so we didn't get a chance to look at that before we said, Granite, you win because you had the low bid.
We opened it and saw there was a concern, saw there was the question, and...
Yeah, so typically, for public bid opening, it's an apparent low bid. So we do check off to make sure they have the documents, not only the bid number and the breakdown of costs. We did check off that they had a non-collusion affidavit for all the bidders. We didn't notice there wasn't a signature at the time, because you're kind of flipping through the documents and checking off what they have. So it's an apparent low bid, then you go back and you review the bid.
Do the fine-tooth comb. So there's, I guess, a very small amount of time when you're just opening the bids, flipping through and saying, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. I just wanted to make sure I understood the methodology. Thank you.
Seems to me this is the second time we've had a question come up about the non-collusion paperwork being included. Is that correct?
To my knowledge, no, this is the first time this particular issue.
Okay. I
Mayor,
remember there was some paperwork issue when we did the bridge.
there were some paperwork issues, and Mayor Canning greeted me. That was the last time I was here with you.
Didn't that also involve Granite Construction?
Yes, it did.
But it was different paperwork.
It was different
A
paperwork.
different issue.
And I understand Granite's attorney is here. He can speak to that if the council wishes.
So the non-collusion agreement was transmitted to us in a timely manner, although not at the opening. Is that correct?
Technically, no. The requirement is to have a signed non-collusion affidavit with the notary jurat in the envelope. Granite had a non-collusion affidavit with a signed notary jurat, the separate notary page. They just did not include a signature on the form itself.
How does a notary notarize something without a signature?
That's again, obviously, we don't know what the notary had in front of him or her at the time. I, in my career, have unfortunately seen situations where the notary works for an employer, and the employer sticks the notary in front of them, or maybe they had all the forms in the same place, and someone just grabbed the wrong pieces of paper for the envelope. I mean, we don't know.
Okay.
Derek-
At any rate, it does not change the dollar number that we're dealing with. In other words, the low bid remains Granite Construction by, what, about $14,000, did I say? 13,000?
It's 12,000.
12,000?
12,000-ish.
So the bottom line is, they're the low bidder, but the paperwork wasn't timely.
Yes. The paperwork wasn't timely, and in our opinion, this is the kind of, I believe the phrase is, minor irregularity not going to time, price, or quality of the work, which did not give Granite an advantage in its bid. Now, the last time I was here, the council decided that the defected issue actually did give the low bidder an issue. That specific contract, I believe, referred to some of the subcontractor paperwork and exactly what work would be assigned to what subcontractors and what the various costs were. And the second low bidder attorney, I thought, made a very good presentation on why that could actually give someone an advantage. And the council elected at that time to reject the low bid and go to the second bid. In this situation, I know MDS is certainly aggressively seeking the contract. They have a right to do that. And it's, we believe it's a defect that can be waived, but it doesn't have to be waived, and the council can make its own decision. And I understand, I know someone from Granite is here, I assume someone from MDS is here, and of course you should hear them.
Derek, of the other two bidders, or excuse me, the other two were protesting, is it UIG and MDS?
Correct.
Okay. Were both of their paperwork packets complete?
Well, let me clarify that. I guess UIG was a materials
Okay.
supplier, so
Scratch
they weren't
that.
technically a,
On MDS, was their bidding packet complete?
yes.
Okay. All right, council, any other questions? We do have identified representatives from both Granite and from MDS. Any other questions? All right, we will hear, please.
I thought I read somewhere in our packet a letter from a lawyer that said MBS was not complete.
Yes,
Oh, it was on Granite Stationery, but they pointed out some alleged deficiencies on MDS's.
you are correct, you are correct.
Failure to list a concrete supplier, failure to list a painting subcontractor,
And,
failure to identify the age of the subcontractors, total gross receipts
Yes.
for West Coast Electric.
yeah, they did send in a letter. It was well after the bid protest deadline, and I believe it was even after the agenda was posted, or just before the agenda was posted. Subsequent, we received another letter from MDS, which I checked the agenda packet, which did not make it into your agenda packet, which refuted the points made in a manner that satisfied us that on its face, MDS had met the requirements and you could properly award a contract to them.
Okay, because the protest letter is dated February 27th, and the response by Granite to the protest letter is dated February 28th.
Right.
So I would say that is very timely.
Well, no, there was an additional protest. Granite submitted a subsequent letter.
Oh, that's not in the packet, okay.
Yeah, I'm not
All
sure.
right,
Or actually, I
got
think
it.
Granite's letter is in the packet. MDS's response, I don't believe is in the packet. But MDS did submit a response. We reviewed it, and
Okay,
and
thank
we
you.
were comfortable. Yes. No, it's a confusing situation.
All right, any other questions from council members? So we've got two actions to take here. Well, first is whether or not we're going to hear or entertain a protest. And then second is to make a decision on that, should we so choose. Correct? So would you, so whether or not we have a
The first question is UIG present in the room to continue its protest? If UIG isn't here, then...
All right. Are there any representatives from UIG? All right. So at this point, we'll dismiss the UIG protest. We do have a representative identified from MDS, correct? There you are. Normally, Mr. Rosenthal, I take these in the order they came in, and I have two granite speakers ahead of MDS, or should we hear the MDS first, since they are the protest?
I believe MDS should be allowed to address the body first.
Absolutely. All right. Any other questions from council? Yes, sir. Please, representing MDS, if you can share with us your name and who you represent. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen and board. I'm Mike Sturley. I'm the president of MDS Construction. We're out of Redding, California. I'm here to reiterate our protest at the bid, prior for the bidding and what have you. MDS Construction has been in business for 35 years. We've done numerous water tanks from 100,000 to 5 million gallons. We've done over a dozen water treatment plants, booster stations, lift stations, etc. So we're very familiar with the requirement for all public works projects require a notarized affidavit for non-collusion. It's pretty standard in the industry. I've yet to, in my 50 years, not have had to comply with this. We, at bid time and what have you, we did notice that typically you have one notarized signature that is required to submit with and prior to the bid opening. In this particular case, we had two requirements: the president, vice president, and the secretary, treasurer, controller was required. So you had two notarized certificates that were required prior to the bid opening. I sent my boys to town, and we incurred costs and what have you that we had to incorporate into our bid. I'm sure you're aware of that many jobs are lost over just a few dollars and what have you. We tentatively, when the bid results were came out, we took and reviewed them and found that in the correspondence that they did not properly submit their affidavits notarized. I have been around many times where I've seen projects where somebody failed to submit their documents and what have you, and they were immediately rejected. In this particular instance, the notarized affidavits of non-collusion, what have you, is a state-mandated document. It's our belief that it is not waivable. We've checked with FEMA, we talked with them, and their response was that you must comply with city, state, engineering and or requirements for the bid documents and what have you. To do so could possibly jeopardize funding and what have you. It's addressed in some regulations that are within the federal codes. It's our position that they have, it's a fatal, although it may seem trivial, it is a state-mandated requirement. And to overlook that is a violation of the California Public code. You're not allowed to remedy a bid after the fact. In this particular case, they were lacking their signature, which would invalidate the affidavit. Not just that particular one, but there's a requirement for 2 documents. And it's my understanding they just recently, a few days past, have submitted that other document. The California Code of Regulations require that the documents, you can't remedy them after the fact. There's a case of, let's see, the name of the company would be Valley Crest Landscaping versus City of Davis, where a project was awarded and subsequently declared illegal. And of course, the project had gone on and it created quite a stir. It's our position that if this is, our documents are all in order, our bid has been verified. There was some question that it was challenged by Granite, what have we addressed all those issues, and we've been declared eligible for award. For you to award this job to Granite Construction with the defects in the bid could jeopardize funding. It could create, if it was challenged in court, I cannot see where a judge, a California judge, would rule that it's a waivable item and set a precedence, whereas any and all contractors no longer have to comply with that they could fix their bids after the fact. And so therefore we feel that you should not waive the irregularities and go with the contractor that has provided a responsible bid. Please.
Thank you, sir.
Could I ask a question?
I was going to let them both speak. Go ahead.
I'd like to ask a question. Under your letter dated February 27th from your law firm, I believe, Hasselrud, is that your law firm?
That's our attorney.
Okay. He cites a Code of Federal Regulation 23 CFR 635.112, which mandates that the statement be submitted with the bid. In response to that, Granite's lawyer says Statute 23 CFR 635.112 only applies to highway construction projects federally funded by the Highway Administration and is codified under Title 23 Highways, Chapter 1, Federal Highway Administration, Subchapter G, Engineering and Traffic Operations.
Yes. If this were a highway project, they would no longer be eligible for the project.
But how does
under the highways. But this comes under another CF number, which isn't clearly definable as that statement there is. So, but I can't imagine that building work would not go along, a judge that would be making a decision as to that would not use that as a justification, because in building work, they still fall under the Code of Federal Regulations. The Code of Federal Regulations for building work is not as definitive. It talks about collusion and all those different issues, but it doesn't specifically say that you would be disqualified, other than the fact that if you do not comply with city, state mandates, which is the case here, this document of non-collusion is a state-mandated document. If you go against that, you're subjecting yourself to litigation and what have you, and it would be up to the courts to make that decision or interpretation. I have never in all my time seen a waiver for a document that requires it to be notarized. we had both of ours notarized, which is strange. You brought up the point there, Joe, that how a document, when we went to the notary, looks at your driver's license, watches you sign that document, and certifies that they watched you. And in fact, you are the party that has signed that document.
Well, I'm not a lawyer and I can't debate this, but one letter says it clearly applies only to highways, but you say, with rather circular reasoning, that any construction it applies to, but it says specifically highways, and this is a water tank. I can't see how you get around that.
It's a building.
Doesn't say, that's not what it says.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
But it still says that there is language that you have to comply with state mandated documents and what have you. And that's what hasn't taken place. They did it after the fact.
Okay.
That's an illegal action.
Thank you, sir.
Uh-huh.
Next from Granite, I have Dustin Jones. Dustin is the guy with the tie, but not a lawyer. Please share with us your name and who you represent.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Dustin Jones for Granite Construction. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, Madam Clerk, and Mr. City Manager for allowing us the opportunity to speak. MDS's protest has kind of evolved over the past few weeks. Originally, we had this non-collusion affidavit issue, and we responded to it, and we cited a 33-year-old California case called Menifee versus the County of Fresno. In that case, you know, I've done about 100 of these protests. You never find a case right on point. This case is on point. The issue in that case was an unsigned non-collusion affidavit. And the Court of Appeals said, it's a 1985 case, I'm sure Mr. Rosenthal is familiar with it, quote, appellants argue that the failure to sign page 4 of the bid form means that no assurance of non-collusion was made, and that that defect renders the bid invalid. This argument will not fly. That's what the Court of Appeals said on this issue 33 years ago, and that's been the law ever since. So we cited that law in our response, and the strategy changed. They cited this federal regulation for that Councilmember Barnes brought up in conjunction with a lawsuit threat. Now, it's very, very clear that that federal regulation does not apply to this project under any way, shape, or form. And in doing 100 of these protests, I have learned one thing, that threatening to sue your customer is not a way to win friends and influence people in this business. We responded to that. Then they cite another federal regulation, because we pointed them in the right direction to the FEMA regulations. And they cite this one, and all this regulation says is you got to comply with the law and you got to be fair. I urge you to read it. It doesn't say anything about whether this council has authority or discretion to waive anything. There's no limitations on your authority to waive in that federal regulation. All it requires is you have to follow California law. So we've provided multiple affidavits with fully compliant with California law corporate resolutions by the Board of Granite Construction, certifying that nobody colluded. We're happy to provide as many of those as the city requires. Granite has been named one of the 100 most ethical companies in the world. Not just ethical construction companies, 100 most ethical companies in the world. And so they omitted a signature on that particular bid form, but there's no dastardly deeds here or anything like that. And we've remedied it. What MDS is dancing around here, and the citation to Valley Crest Landscape is actually interesting, because while Mr. Rosenthal is right that we raised the issues in MDS's bid, after the protest deadline and in preparation for this hearing, we wanted to inform the council about what happened with MDS's bid. And there is California law holding that in order to be a protester and challenge an award or threaten a lawsuit or file a lawsuit, got to be a responsive bidder in the first place. What MDS did was omitted a listing for a coating sub, and there was only one coating subcontractor that bid the job. It was Jeffco, and their bid was $25,000. It was about $15,000 over the listing threshold. They should have listed them. That, Councilmember Kraus, was the issue on that last bid, where if you don't list a subcontractor, then you get awarded the job, and you have increased bargaining power. So you can go shop the subcontractors and grind them, and it ends up being a competitive advantage. It's that type of defect that brings it from the waivable area of law to the non-waivable area of law, because you had a leg up on your competition. The same is true for the concrete supplier. There was only one concrete supplier that bid the job, and that was Harold Smith & Sons. And rather than $10,000, rather than be below the listing threshold, as MDS claims, Harold Smith & Sons, at least their bid to Granite, is $12,000. So those are material subcontractor listing omissions that we wanted the council to know about. And so any threat of lawsuit by MDS against the city is a hollow threat. By submitting a non-responsive bid themselves, they're ineligible for award. And they are therefore also ineligible to file a lawsuit against the city. But to the extent they go to court and do it, because you can file a lawsuit for anything, the law requires them to name Granite Construction as a real party in interest. And so we'll be there, we'll defend this award, we'll defend the staff recommendation, and we'll do it quickly. And I'll bet my bar card on it. I'll take the case on contingency. I'm that confident in this one. So I have a Granite representative who is actively involved in both bidding this job and managing jobs of Granite in this city. So I'd like to introduce him. His name is Justin Ingram. It's all right with you, Mr. Mayor.
He's got a speaker card, so your time is concluded, and we'll next have Justin Ingram. Justin, welcome back. Please share with us your name and your position and who you represent.
I am Justin Ingram. I'm with Granite Construction Company, and I'm a project manager estimator. So I'd like to thank the board and the mayor for their time and allowing us to speak tonight. Obviously we agree with the city council's or the city's recommendation, staff recommendation to award to us. We've signed multiple non-collusion affidavits, and as Dustin said, we'd be willing to sign as many as necessary to satisfy your guys' conscience on that. We look forward to doing a good job here in the city. We've been doing work here for the last couple years in the vicinity. We like this area, and we enjoy a good working relationship with people in this area, so local suppliers and vendors, and we know the project, we know the area well, and we would look forward to working with the city project. So,
council members, any questions? Justin, how did the packet end up on our desk without a signature?
This gentleman had the correct answer, wrong piece of paper. There's about 20 documents to sign, or different pieces of paper to sign or notarize or whatever. And bid day we get, it's got to go to this person, get signed, get this, goes here, flip pages, and stuff it in the envelope and run down here to Calistoga from Ukiah. So that was clearly what happened there. So
I have a question
Yes,
about what is the definition of non-collusionary document? Who are you preventing collusion with when you sign that?
So we would prevent collusion with any and all parties, essentially. So we would be not wanting to collude with other bidders.
You're out. It says you're out there on an island all by yourself, and you don't talk to anybody else. You don't collude with anybody else for any reason on this project, other than normal construction stuff.
Yeah, we don't discuss with other contractors to, hey, you don't bid this job and we won't bid that job, so that a person would have a competitive advantage on this project and we'd get a competitive advantage on another project.
So your brother-in-law works down the street, and you, okay.
Yes, sir. And then, unfortunately, historically, that was an issue in construction industry. But as Dustin pointed out, Granite Construction, we're, one of the top 100 ethical companies in the world. And there's only 3 construction engineering firms on that list of ethical companies. Granite is one of them.
Okay. Thank you.
So, yes, sir.
Council, any other questions?
Yeah, I have a question. So my understanding is we had a signed notary document, but there was, were there 2 pieces of paper? We have the notary document, but we don't have the signature representing your company. How does that happen?
Yeah, so we're, when you get these documents, and there's a number of them, right? So you go through and you're signing, and I believe she notarized it. He flipped the page, signed the next document, and so on and so forth, as opposed to, because there's a number of places to sign. But we did remedy that, as noted. So yeah, I'm not specifically a notary, so to just specifically.
So the page was notarized.
Correct.
Which would tell me that somebody was sitting at the table signing documents, but clearly did not sign that one document.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
All right, thank you very much. I do have another speaker card, but do you have a material point of clarification?
On the, just for Mr. Rosenthal's purposes, there's a recent it's called Bay City paving case, and the issue there was you omit a bid document, but you sign the bid form in other spots, and that's a waivable.
All right, thank you very much. Next speaker card I have on this topic, I'll give you one chance. I'll give you a rebuttal right after I have my last speaker card on this. It may be material. This way you can rebut both. David Moon Wainwright, I have a speaker card for you on this item. Was that a typo? Is that correct? Please share with us your name and your address, should you so choose.
David Moon Wainwright, 1210 Pine Street, Calistoga. Just briefly, I'm confused, and I don't read all this stuff normally, and I'm not used to city government and bid process and all of this stuff. But I see a lot of numbers through this motion, and I just want to be clear. The total for the project is $1.8 million. Then the feds are going to give us 75% of that, roughly. Is that accurate?
Derek.
Yes, the granite bid is 1.874.
Okay.
And 75% of that is coming from?
The FEMA hazard mitigation grant.
All right, thank you.
In line 99, the recommend budget adjustment appropriates an additional $2 million. That kind of language bothers me, and I just go, wait a minute, are we doing 1.8 or are we doing 3.8? And I just wanted clarification.
That is a very fair question. Thank you, sir. Derek, can you please clarify? What do all those numbers mean?
So we have the bid for 1.874. Then we also have additional construction management services. So we have to hire, part of the grant requirement is that you have inspection on the project to make sure that the money that they're granting you to the city, that it's being used responsibly and that you're getting a product that they paid for. And so that's another added expense, about another $150,000 or so. So you're up over $2 million, and then we typically have and part of that construction services includes inspections, special inspections. The concrete cylinders get poured and broken to make sure you get the right strength concrete for your foundations, those kind of things that are critical to a good project. And then typically we have a contingency on top of that for change orders and those kind of things that come up with construction. And we have about a 5% contingency on top of that. So the total's around 2.21 or 12 million.
And inside that 2.12 million is included the granite bid of the 1.8.
Correct.
Just to clarify for Mr. So it's not compounding, David, it's inclusive. All right. So it's not 2.1 plus 1.8. All right, thank you. Mr. Sterling, you'd like to rebut or respond?
Thank you.
2 minutes.
The issue of the point before us is not MDS. We responded to their allegations of inappropriate things. Staff reviewed our rebuttal and said that we qualify for award. So they've reviewed it and what have you, their smoke screen and what have you. What is an issue here is Granite going to be allowed to get a job where their documents were defective in violation of the Public Contract Code. Your position is, yes, they either are in compliance or they're not in compliance. Then you either accept or reject their bid, you go to the next bidder and check them, and then to the third bidder if they're disqualified, and then your option would be to put out the job for rebid. But right now, the issue is, are you going to accept a defective bid in violation? And I can't imagine the courts going along with supporting something that is so blatant and opening up the door for all contractors to be able to not submit their proper documents and do it after the fact. That's, I believe, quite the violation of the Public Contract Code, which prohibits such an action.
Thank you, sir. Is there anyone else in the public wishing to address this matter? All right, I will close the public comment. Mr. Rosenthal, you're on.
I would just like to add a few points. Number one, the entire purpose of these complicated specific rules for public contracting, there are two purposes. Number one, avoid fraud, favoritism, and corruption. And number two, protect the public fisc. That's why we're all here. We've certainly seen no evidence of fraud, favoritism, or corruption. We've told you the amount at stake for the public fisc. Number two, on the federal law issue, I believe the gentleman, whoever, from Mr. Steary, I believe, a lot of regulations have been cited, and as I said, MDS has been fighting. But I personally believe the most important of the applicable federal regulations simply says that the local agency must follow the same policies and procedures it uses for procurements for its non-federal funds. I can certainly assure you that the advice that we've been giving you is no different on this project than if it hadn't been 75% funded with federal funds. So I can at least assure you that whichever way you go, I believe you'll be complying with that guideline. The third thing is, Derek, I believe you spoke with, Dylan, I'm sorry, you spoke with someone from Cal.
Correct. Yes, so on Wednesday, February 28th, we did contact Cal OES. Cal OES administers.
Can you just clarify for everyone who Cal OES is?
California Operations of Emergency Services.
Thank you. Office of, yeah, you're good.
It was close. Anyways, they, FEMA, provides the grant money, but the state administers, Cal OES administers that money. So they are kind of our go-to as far as if we have questions regarding the grant, if we need to ask for extensions, those kind of things, we always go through Cal OES. And they're in contact with FEMA. And so we did contact Stephanie Stevens, and she had talked with her manager, Lisa, and came back and said that, and this was verbally, that that we didn't have, we wanted to make sure we weren't going to jeopardize our funding, obviously. I mean, that's crucial. And she said that she had checked with her manager, and we had a couple phone calls that day, and she informed me that she had talked with Lisa and her management team, and at this point, as long as we follow our normal policy and procedures for public contract procurement, and at the direction of our city council, Cal OES does not see this as jeopardizing any funding.
All right, thank you. Yes, Mr.
Yeah,
Rosenthal.
and then just my final comment. Again, Mr. Siri is correct that the Granite bid did omit a document. It was technically non-responsive. We believe the council can waive that, but you certainly don't have to waive that. So, it's your choice.
The absence of that original document in the packet, would we deem that non-material to the situation in terms of their ability to complete the project, their ability to meet budget, et cetera, et cetera? I mean, there's no missing subcontractor bids. It's just a piece of paper with a signature.
It's a piece of paper, but just, it is an important piece of paper.
Understood.
And just, you had asked for what it meant, and Mr. Barnes, I was going to actually read some of it from you. The bidder, being duly sworn, says that the bid is not made on behalf of any undisclosed person. The bid is genuine, not collusive or sham. That the bidder has not directly or indirectly induced any other bidder to pin a false or sham bid, or has colluded, connived, or agreed with any bidder to put in a sham bid, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, it's statutory language. The form actually has the statute number on top of it. It's an important form.
And we received the form. It wasn't, we weren't missing the document. We received the document. It just did not have a signature, and it was also notarized. So that tells me
Clerical.
it was just a clerical error somehow.
Okay. Council, other questions? So, Mr. Rosenthal, at this point, we either agree to accept the Granite bid, which is dismissing the protest, or do we actually have to address the protest by voting on that?
I believe the way the resolution before you is worded, it explicitly approves the Granite bid and waives the defect, so I believe.
All right. Councilmember, other questions or direction you'd like to head here?
I will make a motion I will move the resolution of the City Council of the City of Calistoga, County of Napa, State of California, conditionally awarding a construction contract to Granite Construction Company in the amount of $1,874,955 for construction of the Phage Canyon Water Storage Tank Replacement Project, approving a budget adjustment in the amount of $2,041,160 and authorizing the city manager to execute the contract.
Second.
We have a motion by the Vice Mayor Dunsford. We have a second by Councilmember Kraus. City Clerk Flamson, can we roll call this, please, because there was a protest involved?
Vice Mayor Dunsford,
Aye.
Councilmember Kraus,
Aye.
Councilmember Lopez Ortega,
I'm gonna abstain.
Get to state your reason for abstention.
Well, it's a error in the company, and I think if we allow this to happening, we can have. I'm not sure about having. I don't feel like the city should be put in a position that somebody come and make a lawsuit against us, because we've been seeing that a lot, and I just don't feel comfortable if the paperwork was not done properly. I don't feel comfortable to vote in.
So abstain?
Abstain.
Councilmember Barnes,
Aye.
Mayor Canning,
Aye. Thank you. Motion carries 4-1. Thank you very much. Moving on to item number 11. Consideration of adoption of ordinance 734 and 735, updating water and wastewater rates. This is the second reading. The recommended action this evening is to adopt the ordinances. Taking us through this item will be City Manager Dylan Feek.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Before City Council this evening are two action items related to the 2017 water wastewater utility rate study we've been discussing for a while. The action items include approval of the second reading of two ordinances, Ordinance 734 as it pertains to water and Ordinance 735 as it pertains to wastewater, all of which can be found in your packet. At the last council meeting on February 20th, a member of the community had spoken with Council Member Kraus prior to that meeting and requested that the ad hoc utility rate subcommittee, Council Members Kraus and Barnes, meet with a few residents to consider a different proposal. That committee met on Tuesday, February 27th for about 3.5 hours to discuss the proposal. There's about 9 community members present, as well as select staff, members of the ad hoc committee, and our representatives from Bartle Wells Associates. Tonight we're going to allow representatives from that community to come and to present their item. My understanding is we've invited them to come for 10 minutes. We did have a long, lengthy discussion. It's extended about 3.5 hours last Tuesday. And certainly Council Members Barnes and Kraus can report out as they normally do for any subcommittee meeting that they so fit. And so we'll give them time here in just a moment. Also, I've asked Bartle Wells and Associates, Doug Dove and Abigail Seaman, to be here just to answer any questions representing the city as our rate consultant. Before I invite any member of the public to come up and speak, one thing I just wanted to share with Council it's been really good discussion over the last several months and what I consider takeaway items for the City Council to consider during an upcoming budget process or an upcoming, as we look at how city operates and handles things like accounting, financial planning and budgeting. Some of the items that are still to be determined but forthcoming are looking at how we verify income eligibility for our discount program. So we're looking at possible modifications now, which are still to be determined. Also, the city is pursuing debt refinancing. So I had a phone call late last week, and we're looking at about a 2-month schedule to get all the documents in place and do the refinancing. Approximate time is May 2018. And we're projecting somewhere between $60,000 and $80,000 a year in savings. We won't know for sure until the bonds are bid, but we're very optimistic that we'll be able to refinance 4 of our debt issuances into 1 single debt issuance. Another reason we're going from 4 to 1 is each time you issue debt, you have expensive costs to do that. So by doing it in 1 large debt issuance, we're saving money. We've heard from members of the community and talked about what we call a capital project reserve, setting aside any extra money we can for future capital projects. I think the needs, residents of this town understand the need for water sewer system improvements, and so having additional capital project reserves can be something that the City Council considers. Identifying other funding sources for miscellaneous capital projects. There might be revenue streams. We've heard from Councilmember Kraus had an idea of, can we use CDBG funds to do this? He's asked a few questions there. What other sources of revenue can we use to pay for our capital project needs? And then I think lastly, and this was really, to me anyway, was really important in last Tuesday's discussion, was this idea of conservation. That the city should be doing more and everything it can to promote conservation. We do have money that we budget as part of our water enterprise fund, which is for water conservation. We did a lot of the cash to grass rebates, but maybe we look at how we retool that now. And so that's one of the things I'll be looking at and bringing to council as part of our budget discussion is how can we better promote conservation in light of all these discussions we've had over the last several months. So a little bit of the work that I've yet to do, but at this point I'd invite, I'm not sure if Paul or Antoinette, how you'd like to present, but the time is yours. Thank you.
So Councilmember Barnes and Kraus, you two did participate in the community discussion last Tuesday, correct?
Yes, we did, and all of the comments that City Manager Feek made are appropriate. I will say that The two people before us today, Antoinette and Paul, did a great job on going through and culling out some additional statistics about ratepayers and where medians are and averages are, and what the resulting fees are, as well as there's two ways that water is sold in this community, if that's the proper term. There are fixed fees and there are volumetric fees. And the point that was made is that in many perspectives, the fee structure is a regressive one, and that it does not promote conservation. And I would have to agree with both of those observations, and that while the proposal that they're about to give to the council is not 100% of what they would like to see, I think it's a compromise amongst the people that worked on it to bring something to the council. And I think we're going to hear the presentation, and then we can get some additional input from our consultants, and then make a decision on how we're going to proceed with this.
Councilmember Barnes, thank you.
For the most part, I agree with Councilman Kraus. However, I did some number noodling on my own, and I believe there are some major inconsistencies with the proposal you're about to hear. I think the community pretty much knows our proposal, the council's proposal, so I believe that Mr. Knoblich and Antoinette should go first and present theirs, so then we can compare the two, and we can have a little discussion about it.
All right, thank you. In terms of a process, we have agreed that the first presentation will be 10 minutes. We'll then allow for public comment after that, which will go back to the 3-minute rule, maximum of 3 minutes. But just to clarify, this is public comment on an agendized item. This is not a public hearing. All right? So with that said, Paul or Antoinette? Please introduce yourself and share your name and address, should you so choose.
Hi, my name is Paul Knoblich. I live at 1019 Cedar Street. I have given to council members Iris and Mayor Canning and Michael Dunsford the 17 pages of raw data that we use from the city, that was supplied by the city, so that we could analyze the raw data. So it's the same thing that the consultants have had, and it was passed out to them, and that was looked at very closely the other night. I will skip over all of that to say that these are the observations in general that we came out with, and I'm referring to the page that looks like this, for those of you in the audience. The general observations regarding the average monthly use of water in 100 cubic feet units by single-family residential customers only for the 12 months of July 2016 through June 2017, and for those 1,081 customers who are still on the books and using water, that the median customer number 541 of 1,081, the person smack dab in the middle, used an average of 5.33 units for those 12 months. An average per month of 5.33 water units. The average monthly use of all 1,081 customers was 6.67 units for the month. Now, the top 55 customers out of the 1,081, that's the top 5% or 55 customers, used an average of 29.1 units. That's 4 times the average. The top 5% of those customers also use 22% of the water. The top 2% of customers use 14% of the water. And the top 1% of customers use 10.3% of the water. Those are just some of the facts that we acknowledged. Now, on the lower half of the page are excerpts from the Proposition 218 notice, and it's only separated out with pertinent information for single-family residential users. The proposed rate is going up to $33.03 for the flat rate, up 43.3% from the $23.05. The volumetric per usage of units is going to $7.09 as proposed by the city. That's a 9.1% increase over the $6.50. And for the proposed wastewater rates, those are going from $66.25 to $69.49. That's up 6.5%. So when we hear that the rates are going up 15%, we see that there's a big disparity, and obviously the bulk of that is in the flat fee in the water area. And from now, I'll have Antoinette take over.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Antoinette Maillard. I live on Lily Street in Calistoga. Okay, I'll get closer. So, in extremely general terms, the alternative pricing schedule that we're presenting differs from the city's in basically two essential ways. Instead of raising fixed fees, as the city plan proposes in year number one, the alternative plan leaves fixed fees exactly as they currently are. Second, in year number one, the city plan raises the per unit water consumption rate to $7.09 a unit, while the alternative plan proposes $10 a unit. Here's how these modest, and they are pretty modest, I mean in terms of structure, changes would affect our bills. For over 98% of single-family households, fixed fees in the alternative plan comprise a lower percentage of their total bill than in the city plan, shifting some, but unfortunately not all, of the lopsided financial burden away from small users to larger users. Users' total water and wastewater bill under the alternative plan would be the same as or lower than the city's plan for households using up to 5 units of water per month. This represents roughly the 50% of Calistoga households that are the most conservative water consumers. With regard to fixed fees, the council proposal asserts a cumulative ratio of 40% fixed to 60% variable fees. However, our analysis has shown that for all single-family ratepayers, the cumulative fixed fee ratio is not 40%, but almost 70%. I cannot speak, or we cannot speak, to the cumulative ratio for commercial, industrial, and other customer classes, but close to 70%, not 40%, is what the single-family sector would pay, the entire sector would pay under the city plan. The significance of this is that the greater the percentage of fixed fees, the greater the relative burden on the smaller users, and the less incentive there is to conserve. If you would look at the city proposal page, we have two. One, if you look at the first line, says city proposal, and the other says alternative proposal. I'd like to walk you through a small portion of that data. If you'll look down the far left column, which is the one that gives you the number of units consumed in a particular month, to line 21, for 21 units of water per month, and then look across to column 8, you'll see that you would have to use 21 water units per month to have your fixed fee be 40% or less. 21 units is more than 3 times as much water as the average household consumes. Less than 3% of all households in Calistoga fall into this category, so 97% of all users are paying more than 40% in fixed fees under the city proposal. If you look at the same two columns, that would be column 1 and column 8, on the alternative data page, you'll see that 40% kicks in not at 23 units, but at 13, which is definitely not ideal, but it is significantly more equitable. You may also want to look at column 7 on both pages, where you'll find that when looking, this is taking into account the entire monthly bill for a given customer, the amount paid per unit of water, depending on how many water units are consumed. That's what you'll see in column 7. By shifting emphasis slightly in the direction of variable fees, in the alternative plan, small users end up paying less than in the city plan, while large consumers pay significantly more. In column number 9, you'll see some of those differences spelled out. Only one of the pages has column 9. That would be the alternative page. We want to be clear that our alternative billing model that we're presenting is not a truly equitable one. Sadly, small consumers will still remain at a disadvantage compared to large water users with regard to dollars billed overall for each unit of water consumed. What we can say is that the alternative model is demonstrably more equitable. And the alternative model offers yet another important benefit that I'd like to touch on briefly. The more you shift the emphasis away from fixed fees and toward variable or usage fees, the more closely what we pay will reflect the volume of water we actually consume. This motivates people to be more thoughtful about water. It encourages conservation and it discourages waste. I believe that we can all agree that this is not only a compelling argument, but in the view of the vast majority of Americans, it reflects the moral imperative that we all share as stewards of our increasingly fragile planet and of the world we'll pass on to future generations. The city has expressed concern that possible drought and higher usage rates will lower consumption and thus reduce revenue. If so, the lowering of consumption should be viewed as a good thing. And it's our job as good citizens to price consumption to reflect this positive evolution in our environmental sensibilities while still choosing fiscal responsibility. We know that drought and near drought are the new norm for us. To fail to encourage conservation actually runs counter to good public policy. Projections on water usage and thus revenue therefore should reflect the ongoing drought conditions and the imperative to conserve. Given that this alternative model is not only less regressive and more equitable, and encourages good citizenship and water conservation, while generating more revenue than the city proposal, by about $5,000 a month, we calculate. We hope that the City Council and city staff will take the time to dig into these numbers and give this proposal serious consideration. If anyone has any questions, we're happy to do our best.
Sure. Paul, did you have something you wanted to add, or you guys are good?
I would add that because these rates were based on the usage from July of 2016 to June of 2017, and I recall that we were under restrictions for at least a good part of that, we think there's already a built-in cushion in terms of people using less water than they probably are this year because we're not under those restrictions right now. And we did as good a job as we could on the data with single-family residential only. That's the basis of how the other rates are set, so that your consultant could indeed verify those numbers. And maybe $10 is not the magic number. Maybe $9.75 is, maybe $10.25 is. But we think $10 per unit under the current practices would result in, again, about a $5,000 surplus per month over what the city proposal was. Thank you for considering, and especially thank you to Council Members Barnes and Gary. And Gary, you initiated the ad hoc meeting when Antoinette had spoken with you. And having served on the Water Wastewater Revenue Advisory Committee in 2010 with Council Member Gary and Don Williams, Don and I were a little embarrassed that we didn't see these insights 8 years ago. And Antoinette worked on us before she got to you. All right. Thank you.
All right. council members questions of regarding this proposal? I do have one just to get started. So, and I appreciate identifying, Paul, that these were June 16 to June 17, which was in the drought period, correct? July 16. July 16 to June 17, so that fiscal year. So drought comes around again. Calistogans get even more conservative than we've been in the past. How do we make up the revenue that, regardless of the amount of water we're using, is necessary to fund the long overdue capital improvements that we need to make? Which, back to the fixed versus variable, you know, we've had this conversation multiple times. The fixed at least guarantees a source of revenue to fund and accommodate the capital projects. So either one of you.
I would say that as Paul pointed out, we're starting with our base as a drought year. So that's a head start right there. If we think that the drought is going to require more severe cutbacks than that, and that the public will accommodate, and I suspect they might, as they grow increasingly aware of the need. I think that whoever does the final analysis on this and decides whether, as Paul said, it's 975 or 1050, that we simply have to build in an understanding that it could indeed go 5 or 10 or 12% less than what we saw in the last drought season. There's no way to predict that exactly, but I would say build in a cushion. We built in a $5,000 a month cushion, but that may not be big enough. Maybe it needs to be a $10,000 or $15,000 a month cushion.
And the short answer, Mr. Mayor, is that then either the volumetric HCF unit charge would need to be increased, or the flat fee would need to be increased. When that situation, not if, when that situation presents itself sometime down the road.
Okay. Other council members, or we can go to other public comment and then address it.
I would prefer to hear the public before I say anything.
Okay. Thank you two very
Gary?
much.
Yeah.
I do have 2 speaker cards on this item, but if there are others wishing to address the council on this matter. And if someone can close that back door, it's a little bit brisk in here. Thank you very much. First speaker card I have is Yvonne Henry. Please share with us your name and your address, should you so choose.
Yvonne Henry, 1907 Cedar Street. Last week's public meeting on water and wastewater rates was useful. Thank you. The discussion outlined how the City Council had directed the city planner to engage with financial consultants regarding developing a model for water and wastewater rate increases. The directive was to create a model which was to be legally defensible, establish sustainability, provide revenue for needed infrastructure improvements, and meet bank requirements for refinancing existing debt. The city planner directed the consultants to create a model based on the City Council's goals. Bartle and Wells did provide a model to meet those particular goals. A question is, did the City Council give a directive that was as specific and comprehensive as it needed to be? From last week's discussion, it appears that the directive did not also specify the model to be fair, be equitable, assure that no water user subgroup would subsidize another group, and to promote water conservation. Perhaps there was the assumption that this would just happen. The adjusted model presented by Maillard and Knobloch was able to address additional goals, but obviously was limited to the analysis that could only be made in 1 weekend, not 14 months. Doug Dove of Bartle Wells was so impressed with their presentation that a job opportunity was offered. Doug did say that if he was asked by the city to create a new model based on this kind of analysis by Maillard and Knobloch, that his company is willing and able to do so, and could do so in a 2-week period. Thank you.
Thank you. David Moon Wainwright.
David Moon Wainwright, 1210 Pine Street. I'm sorry, I'm not well.
Then you stay over there and we'll stay over here.
Yeah, I get it. A couple of things, and my math may be wrong. I believe that currently I'm paying roughly 3 cents a gallon, which I know is not how you do it, but it's how I do it. 3 cents a gallon for my water and my wastewater, roughly. And I believe after all this is over, 5 years from now, it's going to be somewhere between 6 and 10 cents a gallon. Now, if I go down to the roastery, a cup of coffee is going to be $2.50 or more. A gallon of water cleanly delivered and waste removed at under a dime a gallon. Diseases come when we don't do this right. We get sick when we have bad water. We get sick when we have waste not taken care of properly. This is imperative. My hope is that whatever you do, as equitably as you could, if there are better numbers and a better way, I would love to get rid of the fixed fee personally. But keep the water and the sewer clean and functioning. That is the first priority. Maybe those of us who are able, if the city could figure it out, could voluntarily put an extra $10 or an extra $20 or an extra $30 or whatever amount we might want to voluntarily on our water bill and sewer bill to help cover those who are going to struggle with this. Some of us are have the ability to do that. Others in our community are really going to struggle. Those in fixed incomes, those who are scraping by. We need to be a community here, and we need to stay safe. Thank you.
Thank you, David. And just as a reminder, our proposal does include a significant increase in the funding for subsidies for residents who qualify or economically challenged to help them with these increases. I don't have any other speaker cards. Is there anyone wishing to address the council? Yes, sir. Please share your name and address, should you so choose.
Yes, Donald Williams on View Road. Thank you, City Council, for considering this. I think it's important that you consider this proposal. I wasn't on board with the alternative plan initially. It took a little bit of work for me to understand the numbers and the concepts, but now I think it deserves serious consideration, so I thank you for doing that. That alternative plan that was described raises as much money for the city. For most Calisogans, it means lower water bills than the proposed rates, and it encourages the conservation that is so important, better than the city proposal. And when there is a choice between two options, then it usually makes sense to choose that one that makes the most sense. Your question, Mr. Canning, was a good one about the drought, I think, and I think the city can be nimble and agile enough that when that day comes, if the rates have to be adjusted, that the city will be able to do that and be both more conservative with its more conservation-minded and also garner sufficient revenue. So I think this alternative plan warrants and merits consideration, and I'll thank you for doing that.
Thanks, Don. Anyone else wishing to address the council on this item? All right, I will close the public comment and bring it back for discussion or questions of the council.
Yes, I I have a question for our consultants who are in the audience here. If the council were to vote to adopt a alternative proposal to what the original one that we did, that includes an additional $5,500 a month increase in revenue, and even if it didn't increase the revenue, if it just shifted costs around, would that trigger us having to go back into the whole Prop 218 notifications and the clock starts again?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, it's a completely new proposal, so it would have to be completely vetted and reviewed and, proved that it does produce the revenues that, it reports to, and it's also that it complies with Proposition 218. However, yeah, that would require a whole new Proposition 218 process.
Okay, and what kind of a timeline would we be looking at if we were to say, tonight, let's redo this? What kind of best case scenario, when would we be looking at being able to see any additional revenue?
Well, I think it would take at least 3 months, if not 4, to get through the entire Prop 218 process to a new adopted rate. So you're probably losing about a third of a year of revenue.
Okay, and the original proposal, had we not had the unfortunate circumstances of the delays that we had in bringing about the original public hearing, we are looking at the June bill right now before we would see any revenue from the original proposal, correct? So that's 6 months. This would be another 4 months, so we're looking at almost a year staying on the old rates. Is that math work? Seen 6 months and 4, 10. I know, 12 months in a year, but so anyway, that's a significant length of time to continue without the additional revenue that I think most people would agree that the city needs to raise. Whether you raise it more from fixed fees and less from volumetric, or more from volumetric and less from fixed fees.
Mr. Dove.
Did I confuse everybody?
No. 6 plus 4 is 10.
No, I understand.
We got it.
I understand.
Kidding. I'm just being a smart.
But that's almost a year.
Almost a year. Mr. Dove, since we have you there. So this is your first time seeing this material? I know you participated in the discussion.
Yeah, we participated in the discussion last week.
Okay.
And so I believe it's the same material
that
we saw.
So, understanding you've not had the opportunity to dive deep.
Right.
Initial concerns on this alternative model versus current model? Because this is what you do for a living.
Right.
So you've seen this before in many different forms and fashions in many different communities. Your expertise. You'll be earning your consulting pay tonight.
Our proposal was carefully developed, and we are recommending that you recover about 40% of the revenue from fixed charges. And that's because you're facing a lot of capital costs, and you're a small agency. And, based on our experience over the years, we've been through a lot of droughts, and water use can vary widely. So if we were to go to a more volumetric rate structure, as the alternate would be, that would, introduce a much more volatility to your revenue stream. Now, that can be addressed by setting aside additional reserves. However, that takes years to build up. So, while this proposal is very innovative, I think there are some flaws with it. The one rate for water and sewer, I think, would need to be divided out because they're separate utilities. And the rate for sewer would have to be capped at a certain level so that that users would not be paying sewer charges on water they use in their backyard. That's not fair. So the proposal would need to be modified. But the bottom line is we believe that the fixed charge is appropriate, and especially in view of your low-income discount program for folks that are in need of assistance. It's there. And with the large capital costs that you're facing, we think this is actually a very good compromise between more fixed charge and more volumetric. And the thought that this is not a conservation encouraging rate is wrong. The rate for the first year for each unit of water will be $7 and some change, and that's enough to make people think twice about using water. That's a significant cost. So it is conservation-inducing rate structure.
Okay, and with the other communities, we addressed this a little bit at the last meeting, and I had mentioned speaking to some of the other mayors in the other cities, just in the county of Napa. And I believe American Canyon is a client of yours?
Yes.
Okay. The concern comes back to, and where some of those cities are correcting from previous rate structures, is they are dramatically increasing their fixed expense or fixed fees as a result of being undercapitalized for having not generated enough revenue. Specifically, the cities of Yountville and St. Helena, which are the opposite.
Right.
Our fixed being proposed is 40-60. Their fixed proposed is, one of them is 60-40, the other 70-30. American Canyon, which had a very assertive program, very low fixed, very high volumetric, is now faced with, according to their mayor, a significant increase on their fixed side because the volumetric element isn't generating the necessary capital for improvements.
That's correct. Yeah, and they had to have an emergency $2 per unit of water surcharge put on their rate because the usage went down so much that they were running out of money. So as a response, now that we're through the 2015 drought, they are increasing the fixed charge portion of their bill to provide more stability. Yountville has a much higher fixed charge portion. They did fairly well in the drought. So
they're already at 70-30.
I'm not sure exactly what they are, but it's higher, yeah.
70-30 there, and St. Helena's 60-40, the reverse. Right. All right, other council members with questions for Mr. Dove?
One question. Do you know offhand how much water a typical mobile home unit uses?
I'm not sure.
I think I can give you an answer on that.
Okay.
Our break-even point is around 5 units per month, and their credit is 54%. So somewhere between 2.5 and 3 units.
2.5 and 3.
Per month.
Can I right? Let me just clarify, Jim, you're speaking specific to the wastewater portion. So on the water, we actually don't collect information on how much each individual mobile home uses because of the way we do the billing with the master meter before they bill. Now, if we wanted to, we could try and pursue and collect that information, but we don't actually know each individual unit. I've even personally seen several bills, ranges anywhere from, some users are 4 and 5 units, some are 1. So they vary, but there are mobile homes which look like single-family homes, and there are some who are very conservation-minded also.
Well, I used the 54, I knew it was wastewater, but I assumed water in, water out, so it would be about the same.
Dylan, you and I spoke a little bit on the phone here a few days ago, and you made some suggestions with regard to financially spurring conservation on the part of residential users through a conservation credit, if you will, on the bill. And I'm not going to put you on the spot as to just how that would work because it's not part of the ordinance that we're considering here. But that sounded to me like and there would be a number in selected as to what a person would be considered to be conserving water considerably, and that number might be around the median or the average number of units per month. That came off of Paul's study here, and that a certain amount of money would then go back to that bill in the form of a credit. And that would be something that would have to be looked at separately from this ordinance. But that would be something that not everybody would get credit on that. The people that are in the top 5% wouldn't receive any conservation credit if they're using 21 units. But someone who is using only 1 or 2 units, that's perhaps having a second home or just very conservatively using water, would get a credit. So where would we take that up?
I believe that's an appropriate time for the council budget discussions. So in my perspective, what we had talked about, not to rehash everything, but again, conservation I think is a priority for many members of the community, this council, this Senate. One of the concerns that I have about the proposal is when it shifts the future funding, I'll call it funding requirements, the money needs that we have as a city, when it shifts that all into the premise that people will continue using this amount of water, when we also want to conserve more water, that's where there's the hiccup for me. I think that if we do achieve savings, whether it be through refinancing or if we found another revenue source, whether grant money or whether, if council ever wants to contribute general fund dollars, whatever discussion comes later on during the budget, we should be considering those items relative to conservation. How can we use, if you want to do a rebate, if you want to do a grant, something to that effect. We've offered grants before. Can we tie that to conservation? And what does that look like? And I think that's a council discussion, which isn't part of this. This item essentially is the ordinance which our consultant believes that provides the funding necessary to operate the utilities. And then those discussions about rebates, incentives, grants would happen later.
All right. Antoinette, you had a clarification for us? Thank you.
Yes, and thank you, Dylan. Tonight is the first sound that we've heard of a nod toward being concerned about conservation, so I thank you for bringing that up. The only clarification is that I have no way of knowing, in the amount of time that we had to analyze data, I don't know, but I accept the statement from the city that the cumulative fixed fee revenue is at 40% for the city. But if you play with the numbers, The single-family residential fixed rate cumulatively is closer to 70. It's 68 point something.
Based on
So-
their usage.
It's not based on usage. I mean, it's based on the projections, but if you take all of those numbers and you add them all up from the year that we had, and you apply the new formula, it isn't going to be 40% for residential. It's going to be 68 and a half or something, 68.8. I'm not exactly sure, but it's very close to 70%. So it is not accurate to say that we are in that modest fixed fee revenue stream. We're in, from the residential standpoint, we're in a very high fixed fee stream, just to clarify. If someone, some other element in the city is obviously paying much less in fixed fees, but I'm speaking strictly to the one that I know.
Okay. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Mr. Dove.
Actually, I have a question for Antoinette. I have a question for you.
Sure, absolutely.
Okay, I just want to make sure I'm understanding.
But just a quick pause, Mr. Dove, be prepared to answer how we came to the 40% number and what we used to figure that balance.
I just want to make sure I'm understanding the reports that you provided. So looking at your data, the medium customer uses an average of 5.33 units. So if I go to 5 units, your proposal basically is going to increase the cost for that particular user by 33 cents a month.
Yes, the people at the very bottom are going to make out, and now this is...
Well, not the very bottom. I mean, are you saying the medium's the very bottom? I mean, the medium would be the...
Paul, please clarify.
Well, my point is the average is 6.67, which is going to be a bit skewed if 5% of the customers are using 22% of the water. So I would guess that a medium is probably a better number to take.
A medium, I think is always a better number, because that
Right.
means 50% of the people are below that, and 50% of the people are above that. And to answer your question, someone who uses 5.5 units of water would be paying 33 cents more per month on the alternative plan than on the city's plan.
Right.
But someone who's using 1, 2, 3, 4 units will pay, and you see those figures in a negative red, would be paying less on the alternative plan than on the city's plan. Everybody above those 5 units will be paying more.
Right.
And
So,
this column 9 is strictly comparing
The two, yeah.
the two
right.
plans. It's not about whether they're paying more in terms of dollars.
If I may, the only people who would be paying less are those very, very top users who will actually be writing a check for less money in 2018 than they wrote a year and a half ago. And that seems so terribly unfair.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Dove.
Yes, so the 40% fixed is the amount of revenue that comes from the meter, the monthly fixed rate. And then the rest of the revenue, the 60%, comes from volumetric.
So
yeah.
that I get.
Okay.
So to decide what's 40, you take an average. How do you get to the first, okay, my water bill every month is $100.
Right.
Okay, well, let's pretend. Right now, what we're proposing is $40 of that is going to be fixed, 60 is variable. In a given month, if I reduce my consumption, my overall bill goes down,
right,
but the percentage of my bill that is fixed goes up.
Exactly.
And vice versa.
Yes.
So how did we get to using the 40 number? What's the math we use as the average biller? Explain to me the methodology.
We developed a revenue requirement for the year, and then 40% of that was determined that it should come from fixed charges. So we have a list of all the city's meters and their sizes. And so, you know, we have a ratio for each size meter. And so we did a number, equivalency of the small meter, and then calculated the charge per meter.
So it's 40% of the required revenue that the city needs to operate and capitalize the system
Right.
is fixed. I understand, I was about to make that point. So that's the city's total revenue. And then how we break that down is where we get into circumstances where a particular household could be at or north of 70% of their actual bill because a fixed figure based on the total revenue, not based on usage.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Someone who doesn't use a drop of water has 100% fixed rate that month.
Exactly.
Or by month.
Totally understand. Yep. Totally understand. Yep. Yep. Michael.
Well, I guess just one observation I have is that I am curious about those who have fixed incomes, seniors specifically, living in the mobile home park, how they would be impacted with one plan versus the other. And when I look, just assuming that somebody in a mobile home park, a senior, is using 3 to 4 units of water, your model shows that they would receive a discount of either $5.49 a month if they use 3 units of water, or $2.58 a month if they used 4 units of water. I'm assuming that you're not, in your numbers, also don't provide for the fact that they also get a 20% discount. And that's a question, actually.
Yeah, no, that's just what I was going to say, is that the single family does not include mobile homes, is my understanding. They're outside of the single family residential sector. They have their own discounted pricing scheme that is completely apart from this.
So I'm not seeing a benefit for them in your proposal.
They are not included in single family residential. And and they are also getting a very steep discount as it stands right now.
Okay. So then my other comment really is that the bulk of our cost as a city is in the infrastructure in the capital projects. So just because somebody may choose to conserve water, they still, in my opinion, have an obligation to equally contribute towards the capital expenditures. And that's the problem. That's the issue. That's why we need to go to a more fixed, a higher fixed plan, in my opinion.
Council Member Lopez Ortega, any comments? Although I do have a question. Okay, so Councilmember Barnes and Kraus, and thank you for your continued efforts on this ad hoc committee.
I still have some comments to make.
Okay. Why don't you go ahead first, and I'll ask the question.
You want me to go? Or
Please.
You. Go ahead. Go. Okay, I'll go. First of all, I'd like yours and ours. And I took the data from the water rate study, which says there were 1,207 meters. This was for period 16. I think you had 1,281. I think you had 1,281. Well, I just took meters here. It was 1,207. And then on the bottom in the fine print, it said less than 0.5% of the bills use more than 30 units of water. That was my starting point, using your math. Working backwards, 12.5% of the people, of the meters in this town, using my 1,207, 12.5% pay zero. That's vacant homes, that's second homes, that's vacant lots with a water meter on it. I have one of those. I pay the fixed every month and that's it. I never use it. There are 151 of those meters in town. 226 meters, or 18.75%, used between 1 and 5 units. 824 meters, or 68.25%, used between 5 and 30 units of water. So the maximum discount that the 151 vacant lots or vacant houses or unused meters could get would be $14, again, using your figures. 1 to 5 units, the biggest discount available for those 226 users is between $11 and $2.58. $5 is your break-even point. Nobody gets, they're the same. At 10 units, your billing, total billing, is $15 a month higher, or 8.6% higher than the city's projected rates. At 25 units, your billing is $60 a month more, or 21.6% higher than the projected rates the city is doing. It's exactly what you're saying. So you are penalizing 69% of our populace to go after the big water users, which represent 0.5%, which is about 10 people. 10. That's where you're going. You're making it much more difficult for the average middle-class rate user to pay it. And I think your math is bogus. I used your math. How can I come to these totally 100% opposite conclusions using your math? Not on math they can't. 2 and 2 is 4. And so did these conclusions. When you're charging the people that use 10 units $15 higher than what we propose to charge, or 8.6, that's what's those rates are going up. Your rates are higher than our rates across the board. At 5%. And that's only 30% of our populace. 69% of our populace is going to get a bigger rate increase using your method than our method. Yeah, 69% use more than 5 units. I don't care about them. You're raising their rates by a pretty large number by fiddling around with the fixed and the volumetric. Secondly, when you do that, we don't have a secure income stream on the fixed, as Michael pointed out. We're having a hard enough time refinancing debt. We're losing out on grants. We're way behind. 9 out of the last 10 years, this city has subsidized those water rates. Some of those water rates were yours, Paul. You were hit by unforeseen consequences, so that's not your fault. But it exists, and we have to fix it, and your proposal makes it harder on the citizens of this community.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Iris?
Well, my only concern is that if we decided to do an alternative proposal, as the consultants say, and this will be a question for you, we will basically start it all over, the whole process again, who's going to put us way more behind than where we are right now.
Correct.
Michael? Yeah, just a couple of things. This is an enormous gamble to go in this other direction with very little benefit. If the, not the average, but the medium user is only going to, their cost is going to increase 33 cents a month. That's what we're talking about for most of the customers. And that's higher than what the city's proposing. Our issue is capital projects, upgrading our infrastructure. We are going to be faced with climate challenges for the foreseeable future. The low end of the users have to help contribute to that cost.
I don't disagree, and that's why.
And you're showing that those low users are getting discounts from the city's plan.
Actually, yeah, I mean, I just want to restate that the column number 9 is not about discounts. It's a comparison between the city's proposal and the alternative proposal.
I know, but absolutely, but you're proposing one proposal versus another proposal. So I'm looking at your proposal as a discount to the city's proposal. And we would have to start this process all over again. And your proposal basically gives the city less secured income going forward, which is a very, very problematic, number one, knowing that we have huge capital projects, and number two, knowing that we are going to be facing climate challenges going forward. So those two issues should tell all of us that we absolutely have to go to a higher fixed rate system.
All right. Anyone else in council?
I'd kind of like to wrap a couple of my thoughts on up here. Back in 2008, we had a very tortuous, I think it was 2008, wasn't it? 2008, very tortuous 21, 22 meetings, counting everything. And out of that, I would have to say we came up with a lesson learned that next time, let's get a consultant. And so we thought we'd learned a lesson there, and we went and got a consultant, and I think that was a good idea. But one of the things we lost when we came up with our new ad hoc committee with the consultant was more citizen involvement. And I think that we might have had more meetings, but I think that we could have hung our hat a little bit more on having more citizen involvement, as well as having the consultant. So I think that's kind of a lesson learned for us. 5 years from now, when we start going through this again, whether I'm on the council or not, hopefully we will have remembered those lessons. I'm also worried about what happens 5 years from now, and there'll be a whole new set of needs that are going to come up. I have no idea what they're going to be, but trust me, things get more expensive, not cheaper. Unless you're talking about computers, perhaps. But we need to start setting aside money, perhaps outside of the rate structure. I know Councilman Barnes mentioned something about putting money as TOT in our general fund income increases aside for capital improvements.
For the 2 new resorts.
Yeah. I think that's going to be essential that we do that. I'm supporting the original rate proposal for a couple of reasons. Number one is we are currently out of compliance with the San Juan Capistrano decision. If we reset all of this, we will be 10 months out of compliance with that court decision, and I think there might be some legal exposure as a result of continuing something that's been adjudicated. And then there's the loss of 10 months of revenue, perhaps 12 months of revenue by the time we get another committee together and figure out how all this is going to go on. So I support the original proposal that came out of the ad hoc committee. And I also want to see the city make a good effort in budget time to find a way that we can do a credit, perhaps, for conservation efforts, and move forward in that manner.
Mr. Mayor, may I make one more comment?
Absolutely.
Paul, Antoinette, if I seemed a little harsh, a little overbearing on my rhetoric. I apologize. I am as passionate about this as you are, and if I offended you, I am sorry.
Thank you.
I just want to say that it's great to see the community involved in this matter and all the efforts that you've been doing, which is great. We appreciate that, especially me, because this is a long process, very complicated process, and I appreciate all the efforts you are making to make this work for the whole community, not just for some groups of people. And also, I have one just last question for the manager. What happened with the group that we have through to conserve water? There was in the past we have a committee or so. Yeah.
We had a green committee. They had helped develop a plan for us and a climate action plan, and we've been working on that plan every year since. I don't believe they've been actively meeting. Actually, we spoke with someone on the committee, Karen Chang, just a few weeks ago, who said, well, we should bring that back. But currently they haven't been meeting. We've just been focusing on the work product they presented. Let's just implement the plan.
Yeah, because I remember there were some staff that they were doing community forums and workshops to teach people how to conserve water.
That was the hired staff that we did for water conservation officers.
So we don't have that right now.
We currently don't have staff. We still have the rebate program. What happened was some staff had resigned to seek employment elsewhere, and we had been so successful with grants, we were receiving fewer grants. Many of the people who were already pursuing cash to grass rebates had already done those, and so even to this day, we still get them occasionally. We advertise them as needed, but it's not a significant amount. A lot of those improvements have been done. That's why the idea of perhaps retooling our conservation program in a different manner might be appropriate.
Sophie, we have closed public comment, but if you have a point of clarification to the question that was just raised, not any new discussion points. Okay.
Thank you for taking my question. When we were talking about the fixed fee versus the volumetric fee, we said that the city and the consultant's mission was to have a 40% fixed fee. I'm hearing with the alternative proposal that single-family residential are close to 68, a 5% fixed fee. Who is getting less? What type of users are getting less than that? Because if you want to average to 40%, single family is getting above. Some other category of users are getting less fixed fee. Who are they? Does someone know that? And how does it balance to 40%?
Yeah, if you look at 1,300 unique, distinct, different residential users, they're all different. So everybody pays a fixed fee based on the meter and whatever their volumetric charge is.
I'm not talking residential. There are more categories than residential. There's commercial,
correct.
Industrial, different commercial.
He's about to answer that question because that's the total number of meters includes that.
And so they take an average to present it because it's very hard to show on one slide how 1,300 residential or a total of 1,600 different meters, different users all show. But basically, the average of the residential is the number that Bartowell has assumed. And keep in mind, when they talk about the 60-40 requirement, it starts with the revenue requirement. What do we need to fund the system? And from there, 40% should be tied to fixed. Now we look at the meters. So that's how it's done.
Okay, but I'm still hearing that, in fact, it's 68% and not 40% in reality for my bill.
It varies by meter user or by household. So, correct, yeah.
Depends how much water you use.
So, okay, thank you, Sophie. It's our total revenue number required to operate the system. Correct. All right, so I certainly appreciate the work put in this. I certainly appreciate the city providing the level of detail they did. I think it was shared with you that we actually don't share this data because we can't, because it's considered individual, but it was redacted. So nobody know you couldn't go find how much water I use, right, Paul? Okay. There we go. I do sincerely appreciate the effort here and the work put in. What is weighing on me for my decision to continue to support the proposals in front of the city now in terms of the rate changes are my multiple conversations in real-world experiences from other cities that have tried both of these models. And the models I'm discussing are lower fixed, higher variable, and then the vice versa. Watching that play out for those cities and hearing what the end result was, which are in all 4 cases, the 4 cities below us were, 3 cities below us, excluding the city of Napa, were undercapitalized systems for both operation and capital improvements. And I really, is interesting because, yes, the mayors get together and joke around and talk about our key learnings and whatnot. The real aha moment for everyone was the city of American Canyon, who delved into a very progressive concept of an extremely low fixed. And then drought happens, etc., and now they're in a drastic point of having to change that. City of St. Helena, drastically having to change their fixed versus variable. I would love to find a way to accommodate water conservers, but my primary concern is the long-term sustainability of the system we have, and I would agree with the Vice Mayor, whether you use 1 unit or you use 20 units, you need to help. You're part of that system, and we have to sustain that system. So with that said, all council members have spoken. We have before us a recommendation to pass the 2 ordinances unless the council has seen any reason otherwise. So I'll entertain a motion as presented or modifications.
I'll make a motion.
There are 2 different items, so we'll start with 734.
I'll make a motion that we adopt ordinance number 734 as submitted.
I'll second
Do I
that.
read the title?
No.
No? Okay.
So we have a motion by Councilmember Kraus. We have a second by Councilmember Barnes. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
We don't need a roll call because we did it the first time.
Okay.
Any opposed? All right. I'll entertain a motion on item number 735.
I'll make a motion that we adopt ordinance number 735 as submitted.
I'll second it.
We have a motion by Councilmember Kraus. We have a second by Councilmember Barnes. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Both motions carry unanimously. Thank you very much, and thank you for everyone for your input. We know this is not pleasant for anyone, including those of us sitting up here, but clearly we feel it's something that we need to do for the long-term sustainability. Moving on to item number 12, set special city council study sessions for goal setting and fiscal year budget review. We're about to set the meeting schedule for the budget review for next year. I know the budget has been brought up by many of you who seem concerned that we weren't sharing all of the line items. These are the meetings where everything is decided on what gets spent where. I encourage you to participate at the front end, not the back end. City Manager Feek, please take us through this item.
Yes, I'll be brief. Mayor and Council, if you just take a look at your staff reports, essentially what we're doing is just like to get this in front of you, make you aware typically we do meetings at the fire station, propose to do the same thing. Several of the meetings that we're recommending happen on Thursdays throughout the upcoming months. Thursday, March 22nd would be for council goal setting. We review annually our goals. What specific projects would you like to give to staff to guide the budget development over at City Hall? Thursday, May 10th, and as we move out, of course, these can be tentative, but we're presenting the schedule tonight. Thursday, May 10th, from 12 to 5 for a council budget study session where we're actually presenting the numbers, our anticipated revenues, certain expenses. Thursday, May 17th, a week later, to fine-tune. There will be council feedback the first day. And then looking at holding the public hearing on Tuesday, June 5th for our draft budget. That'll be here at a regular scheduled council meeting. And then final adoption on Tuesday, June 19th. So if council has any recommendations, if you don't mind, if there's any If any of you anticipate being out of town on any of these dates, let us know. We can modify them at your convenience. It's whatever is your preference.
Councilmember Lopez Ortega.
I will be out of town on the March 22nd. I will be attending the WELL conference in Sacramento.
And that's
It's 2 days conference.
okay, and that's the kickoff. So
Is it possible to, we could meet a different day that week, assuming council can, or the following Thursday, I assume, March 29th?
I'm available either of those days.
Yeah, everything's
Yeah,
fine
me
for me.
too.
well, that's
I
gonna
mean,
yeah.
the
My only
29th.
okay. My only concern is I'm okay with moving it, but if we move it a week, that compresses your staff's ability to
Correct.
make modifications. So
The other way.
can I ask for is the 23rd? Is that complicated? That's a Friday.
I'm gone March 22nd through the 21st through the 25th.
21st through 25th. Okay.
Wanna go March 21, or, oh, hold it, you're gone?
I'm gone the 21st. Wednesday, the 21st, I leave.
How about March 19th, a Monday? Does that give you enough time between now and then to get first draft? Dylan?
Gloria is the one doing all the work, and she's not here.
Silence is acceptance.
I will work with Gloria. If we have a hiccup and we cannot make it happen, I'll let you know. But at this point, I feel like we can do the goal setting session at the first meeting. In my mind, I'm thinking the budget. This is the goal setting. So this is where we sit down, we go over the goals, we have it. Absolutely, we can have it on the 19th.
Okay.
Okay.
So it'll be on the 19th then?
Monday the 19th. We'll be sure and send reminders. I'll also send the goals beforehand so you have time to review them. We typically block off the 9 to 5 time frame, but if you remember, last year we finished around noon. But we just reserved the time.
Okay.
As long as we keep the little beginning exercises to a minimum.
Yeah.
Understood.
That was his rookie year.
Yeah,
He'll
he
be
doesn't
better.
do that
That
anymore.
was
He's
his rookie
jaded.
year?
Yeah.
Okay.
No more team building.
Okay,
We're good. We know each other.
Are all of the other council members okay with the following dates, which become
May 10, yes.
yes?
Yes.
All right. With that said, is there anyone in the public that sees a need for us not to meet on those dates? All right, I'll entertain a motion as presented with the modification of moving from March 22nd to March 19th.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion by Councilmember Barnes. I have a second by Councilmember Lopez Ortega. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. To the press before I come off this item, the two of you in the room, this mayor would greatly appreciate a story explaining the importance of the budgetary process at the front end of our fiscal year. Yes. Dylan would love to write that. All right, moving on to item number 13, consideration of a resolution continuing the local emergency due to the Tubbs Fire as proclaimed by City Council on October 17, 2017, pursuant to Government Code Section 8550. Recommended action is to adopt the resolution. City Manager Feek.
Yes, I'll just be very brief here. At the last time we discussed this resolution, the question was brought up, should we continue the emergency? At this point, I think we're getting very close to where we should consider discontinuing it. At the time that we prepared the staff report, we were anticipating some heavy rains. At this point, all the protective soil erosion measures we've installed up near Kimball Reservoir seem to be working. We don't have any concerns. We've been encumbering funds to replace sidewalk out at Logvy. We have some other work which is scheduled to come up. There's a minor road repair which needs to happen on Washington. We're getting very close to where it's time to lift the declaration at this point. I believe this will be the last time the council considers this resolution for continuing it. The next time you'll see it, we'll be lifting it. We are also getting close to, I anticipate a settlement agreement from our insurance company here very soon, at least a partial payment for some of the losses we've received related to transit occupancy taxes, sales taxes, future property taxes. And when I get those forms, I'll be providing an update to City Council to settle those claims. I'd be happy to answer any questions if you do. If not, we're just continuing the resolution tonight.
Council members, any questions?
No.
All right. Anyone in the public question on this one? All right, close the public, bring it back, and entertain a motion as presented. Any- Vote.
Second.
All right. Item moved by Councilmember Lopez Ortega, seconded by Vice Mayor Dunsford. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, carries unanimously. We will adjourn to the next regularly scheduled meeting, which is March 20th, 2018, with the caveat that there is a special session on March 19th. Thank you and have a nice evening. Thank you. Gary, thank you.